everybody, welcome back to Forza Horizon 4, and, well, the last update. I know it's been quite a while, but I've had some delays here and there, and some more priority-level things to focus on. But we are finally going to be talking and doing stuff with Update 36. I think it's 36. It's the last one. It has the last ever probably DLC car added to Forza Horizon 4, and I thought what better way to end this update series than go back to one of the things that I started with, the Mountain Pass runs. I started this by taking a bunch of DLC race cars and charging them up a hill like Goodwood. And ever since the very first episode, the Volkswagen IDR has been unstoppable. So what if we take the top 10 finishers, or a few of the top 10 finishers, and send them back up? If they didn't have race tires before, put them on race tires. Everything else is still stock, but I wanted to put everything on race tires just to be a little bit more interesting. Also, we have a few new vehicles, specifically 3 new vehicles that I selected, just for a bit of a comparison's sake, to round this off with a proper send-off. And we start off the new vehicle section with the Peugeot 207 Super 2000 rally car. This is not a WRC car. It competes in the lower class, so like the Rally 2 class, the Super 2000 class specifically. So it is all-wheel drive. It has ultra-grippy Michelin racing tires, and rally tires in this case. And it's not as fast as the current WRC cars. We've seen the Fiesta run up here, and this is not going to go that fast. It's naturally aspirated. It's got a little over 250 horsepower, not much more though. It's very light, and it has a lot of grip, which is very good. You can see it going on these corners now. The grip levels are insane. It just doesn't have the acceleration to boost it out of the corner, so you really do have to carry the corner speed. Luckily, it has some pretty decent arrows, able to cut the corner nicely. There it is on rally tires after all, and it's simply not going as fast, so it's much more controllable through these corners. And you see they're chucking it in with a lot of speed. Brilliant double apex. Again, nice and composed, naturally aspirated, delivers a lot of a very smooth power, and when it does have, can really kick it, you know, as much as it can out of these corners. But you can see it's all about the corner speed. He's really pushing it, clipping the sign, running a little bit wide, again pushing it, clips the wall, carries mega speed through the final corner, and we are across the line. Our next car is certainly much faster than the Super 2000 Peugeot. This is a Vol 05RR, and this is specifically the Race of Champions version. Now, Race of Champions is basically you take all the best drivers in the world from all the various disciplines, IndyCar, rallying, Formula 1, etc., and you put them against each other in identical cars to see who is the champion. And this is one of the primary vehicles used. It's very light, less than 1,600 pounds, full racing tires, full aero, and over 300 horsepower. It is incredibly quick, and this is also significant because this is the last update car, unless they announce anything crazy, to be added to Horizon 4, and you can see the grip levels are insane. It may have less than 400 horsepower, but it is in S2 class. This thing is brutally quick. And we're going through there, nice little bit of oversteer. This is rear-wheel drive, and it is very lightweight, relying all on downforce to give traction to those rear wheels. They're not the biggest rear tires in the world. Nice and tight through the downhill double corner. Heading into the chicane now, very fast, 6th gear, flat out, no fear. It's not the fastest S2 class car in a straight line, but it is very good handling. Look at that, nearly flat out through that corner. A little bit of a dab on the brakes around the final one, and we are across the line. Now, finishing us off with the new cars is an electric one. We didn't have any electric vehicles apart from the IDR, so I thought that I would add one just for the heck of it. I don't really like this car. I don't like the way it looks, I don't like the way it drives, and it's really not that fast. I mean, this is all electric, over 2,000 horsepower, and it did not exactly have a blistering launch off the start. However, it also has, 2,000 horsepower, so once it gets going, once you can just about get it around the corner, it is insanely fast on the freeway. 190 miles an hour down this freeway. That is blisteringly fast. But then we have that understeer caused by the four-wheel drive and the massive weight. Sure, it has a lot of carbon fiber and it's a fancy two-seater and everything, but as you can see there by that running wide moment, it's not that easy to drive. The weight just pulls it out of line. And that all-wheel drive, yeah, it helps put the power down, but it also accelerates the dragging out wide. But once you can get it to a straightaway, it absolutely flies. And you can see there actually does get a decent enough line. This does have adjustable aero on it. It is at its max. Tuning was allowed. A little bit of oversteer, actually. Big on the brakes. You saw the Vol was nearly flat out there. This was definitely not flat out. Another lift there. Another little lift there. And then power to the line. We go from an all-electric, all-wheel drive monster to, well, a drift car. Yes, this is the first drift car that we ran, the Holden Maloo. And I normally wouldn't run a drift car because they're really not that fast. However, we have seen drift cars like the Ferrari 599 do actually quite well. So I thought, for this final installment, drag the OG drift car out of retirement and try it again. Tune it a little bit to make it less slidey, not that that seems to be helping very much. That's a massive twitch in fourth gear. He launched it in second, so it's an enormous amount of power, 1,000 horsepower, but again, it is a drift car, so it really struggles to put that power down because, well, it isn't supposed to. It's supposed to put that power down so ferociously it spins the back end out. But obviously that's not how you get speed, so it is a very tricky beast to drive, even in third gear, even in fourth gear. It loves to get the back end out, and clipping that inside curb was not what he wanted to do. It really upset the car even more. And you can see he's just sawing at that wheel. It's really not that fast. It's barely getting over 120, but it is faster on the appearances just off the distance from the gantry and whatnot than the previous runs for this car. So it does seem to be improving. A little bit of understeer there. It looks like it sort of got a four-wheel skid going as it lost grip. Another drift there, running wide, hitting the fence, gets some power down and across the line. This is an interesting one. This is the 2017 Ford Fiesta Wrc, one that I actually mentioned earlier when comparing it to the 207 Super 2000 car. And I include this because, well, it underperformed in my opinion. It's 375 horsepower, all-wheel drive, crazy aerodynamics, and it only did a 125 something, which is nowhere near as fast as I thought it would have gone. Yeah, I know it's low S-Class, and it's only got, 225 tires on it all around, and it's only got about 400 horsepower, and as you can see, the gearing is not designed for large straightaways, but I thought it would do at least better than a 125, so I invited it back, and it's going up this course now. You can see the gearing is a little bit of a problem, but admittedly, in this section particularly, it really helps because it gives you that incredible launch out of the corner. So even though it doesn't have a lot of power, the all-wheel drive, the lightweight, and the gearing really helps get that acceleration figure up. Cutting the corner, a little bit of oversteer on two wheels. I didn't think the rally car would have that problem, given that it's a rally car, but did get a little bit upset there, but he kept his foot down, and it didn't seem to cost any time. You can just see that understeer from the four-wheel drift, just like the Formula Drift car around there. Just losing traction with the inferior tires. But again, you gotta run. You aren't allowed to have race tires on this car, so you can see he's really struggling with the grip. Just about clinging on. Two more corners to go, one more corner to go. Brilliant line through there, and then you just power to the line. Believe it or not, we actually have our first production road car of the entire episode here. The Lexus Lfa. I mean, do I really need a reason to include this one? It's an LFA. It's got one of the best engines ever put into a road car. And this is now on race tires. Nothing else has been changed. It's still got the stock V10. It still weighs about 3,700 pounds. It is still a touring car. However, it has racing tires, as I explained earlier, so it should be quite a bit faster, because it always had a decent amount of power. Not the best power-weight ratio, but it always had a decent amount of power and was decently quick, but it was a road car. It was on road tires, so it could not carry the corner speed of these racing cars. But now that it's on racing tires, it might stand a bit better of a chance, but based on that oversteer, it still seems to be quite a handful when pushing it max. You can see there just a little bit of counter steer to get that four-wheel drift under control. Slideways over the crest, chucking it in, running a little bit wide. Nice late apex though, which is good because it lets you get on the power earlier on this vehicle, because it's not going to have the grip of the IDR or the CCGT, so you got to be able to use that road car power where you can. So getting a late apex is not necessarily the worst thing you can do. A little bit wide again from there, doesn't have the sheer turn of some vehicles. Almost clips the wall, almost does clip the wall, and we are across the line. Okay, I'm going to be honest. We invited the Funko back, and he did a little more modifications than we initially expected, so it's still got 1750 horsepower. It's still got the off-road tires, however, it's now all-wheel drive. So, it's insane. It also has a proper gearbox now, so you can actually do stuff. And it doesn't top out at 130, which means, A, it's even more terrifying than before. Look at that tripoding action. Even with the lower suspension, it's still quite the handful. It's still a nuclear bomb of explosions, and you still had to hold it in third gear, which then immediately shifting up into seventh gear. This is a monster, and it's still not that easy to drive. Under brakes, you can see it's really struggling. Struggling to get it cornered, you can barely get on the throttle, but once you do, almost 1,800 all-wheel drive horsepower is deployed. This thing is a monster. Is it a little more modified than we initially said? Well, considering it went from S1 class to S2 class, yes, absolutely, but it's also a Funko F9. It's not going to be challenging for the top 10, so who really cares? And he's having fun. He runs a little bit wide, gets massive on the brakes. You can't carry any corner speed in this vehicle. It sounds terrifying. Another big stomp on the brakes, just one more corner to go, and then just floor to the line, all of that power being deployed. Now it's time to get serious. This is a Porsche 917 Longtail, and yes, this does have proper racing tires. It had racing tires on it, but those were from the 70s, which means it was still very oversteered. It drove like a proper 70s car should, but now this has no weight, massive horsepower, massive tires, and now those tires are proper racing slicks. The brakes are still very old school though, as you can tell. Yes, it's very light, but the brake technology was very primitive back then. You can still see it's a little bit sideways, but you can see it is flying up here. It's not the easiest to control, because you're putting a lot more speed into a lot older chassis. However, it actually dealt with that curve surprisingly well. Might be the older suspension, but it held that inside curve line, which has thrown off so many vehicles surprisingly well. It turns in, almost hits the wall. That would have been a very expensive accident, but he is flying down this hill. He's already on the chicane, four-wheel drift at 150 miles an hour. That is terrifying in a car that expensive and that dangerous. No safety features at all. Clips the inside wall and then just across the line. Okay, it's time for the big boy game. The top three in a shootout of their own. Starting up in third with the Koenigsegg CC GT. Their one-off race car meant for Le Mans that never got to race. It was a fantastically grippy car. It's probably one of the most grippy cars in all of Horizon 4, and it is flying over 170 miles an hour. A little bit late on the brakes, that's not the ideal line through there. We'll have to see if that affects his run too much. He's trying to push really hard, trying to get every ounce of speed. He might actually be overdriving the car. Yeah, it's good to push it as hard as you dare, but there is a limit where the car does reach. Even a vehicle as impressive as this does eventually run out of grip, run out of acceleration. And we might have found it earlier in that run. He's running very wide, pushing it right up to the edge. Can he go any faster than his previous best, which was a very impressive podium, I'd like to add. He's flat out through that corner, almost flat through that one, flat through that one. Just one more to go, a little bit of a lift, and then on the power to the line. Okay, unfortunately the interior cam broke on this one. However, that does mean we get to see the Koenigsegg Jesko in all of its glory from the outside, because this is the fastest road car we ever had. On road tires, it was only a few tenths of a second off of the IDR's run. So with 1600 horsepower and racing tires, can it go any faster? Again, a little bit late in that braking zone, however, uses it to get a late apex, which again is essential for these high-power vehicles, because this does not have the sheer grip of the CCGT or the IDR, but it does have over triple the horsepower in some cases, which means you have to maximize every single straightaway. You have to absolutely go for it. He started the run in fourth gear because of this stupid gearbox. He runs a bit wide, but again, that gives him a late apex. He's pushing it right up to the limit, clipping the walls. He's going over 200 miles an hour. That is the fastest we have ever recorded. 204 miles an hour down the long straightaway. He's only got a few more corners to go. He chucks it in, a little bit of a lift, and then it's just power to the line. But this is it. This is the moment we have all been waiting for. The Volkswagen IDR coming back to the hill. The record holder for the entire saga. All-wheel drive, Pikes Peak electric monster. It did an impressive 107 its first time around. Can it go any faster? How fast can it go? It's been the record holder. It has no benchmark to beat other than itself. And look at that grip. That is Formula 1 levels of grip. Maybe even better than Formula 1 cars. Who the hell knows? But that is insane grip, and then the acceleration out of the corner. Sure, it has no top speed. It's slower than most rally cars in a straight line, but around the corners and on the acceleration points, there is nothing in the world faster. Look at that. That is nearly completely flat out through their little bit of a lift in the second half, just to make sure he keeps it out of the wall, but that is insane speed, even if it tops out at 151 miles an hour. But he is flat through that section, flat through that section, flat over the bridge, little bit of a lift clipping the wall, and he is across the line! Time for the all-important truth. Did the Volkswagen IDR improve its time? Did the Jesko or the CCGT successfully dethrone it? And I can't believe I'm saying this, the rerun Volkswagen IDR did a 105.58. It's nearly 2 seconds faster than its first run. It's stupid. It's actually stupid. We have had some of the fastest cars in the world and in the game around this course, and nothing has defeated the original IDR's time. So Volkswagen came back and absolutely thrashed it. That is stupid. In second place for today, slotting into fourth behind itself, is the Jesko. A whopping 0.08 of a second slower than its original time. It's pretty much identical. The same cannot be said for the CCGT. It did an impressive 108.1, which is an incredible time in amongst itself, but its rerun was a 108.85. It was 0.7 of a second slower than itself, and that really shows that sometimes the run is everything. Because when you're 0.7 of a second slower than yourself, that is a lot, and I think it was just overdriving the vehicle. You saw in that first sector, especially running wide, and then trying to make up for that, and he just cost himself time as he tried to push it further and further. It happens to the best. Speaking of the best, the Porsche 917 with racing tires probably improves the best out of everybody here. Then we have a little bit further down from the Koenigsegg, the Razier Tachyon, with a sort of mediocre if I'm honest. 110.4, its only real rival was the Rimac Concept 2, another 2,000 horsepower hypercar, all-electric. Very similar struggles, lots of weight, lots of acceleration, but very heavy and not great around the corners. So I guess in terms of the all-electric hypercar competition, the Razor does beat it. It was also beat by a very modified Renault Clio, but that's not the point. So I guess I can't complain too much about that. The Vol does very well for being rear-wheel drive, a 111.7. It's just fractionally ahead of the Supervan 3, but just behind that Rimac. I think it's pretty impressive, getting within a tenth of a second of the Rimac, given that it's, 1/7 of the horsepower. So, no complaints from the Vol. It could have used a little bit more grip, a little more acceleration, so it can truly capitalize on that lack of weight and that cornering speed, but it didn't do too bad. Same thing with the Porsche, actually, the 917, doing an incredible job, actually improving the most out of pretty much anybody here. With a 114.3, it's 4.5 seconds faster than its original time. That shows, more than anything, the benefit of racing tires, because that is stupid. 4.5 seconds fast. The only thing that beats it is our next car, the Funko F9. The original time was a 127.4 for the 130 mile an hour top speed, 1800 horsepower death machine. But the all-wheel drive 1800 horsepower death machine did a 118.4. It's in the top 40. It's only a fraction off the Ferrari 512S. It's faster than the Super GT car. That is an incredible amount of speed. And also another car benefiting from the upgraded tires is the Lexus Lfa. A solid 3.5 seconds faster than its original, doing a 119.0, putting it ahead of the Singer-Williams and the Raytheon Q1 for the top production car, if you will, just being shy of the GT500 and the ATS GT, but that's still a very impressive showing, because that's a touring car, basically. That's a GT car. It's got a fancy interior. It's got luxury amenities. It can store some golf bats in the back, and it still did a very respectable time, faster than a Civic rally car, and almost as fast as a KTM GT4 car. So no complaints on that department. The Fiesta Wrc does do a lot better. It becomes one of the fastest rally cars, beating out the Starion Group B prototype fractionally, just fractionally, 0.07 of a second, 122.7, beating its previous time by 2.3 seconds. So pretty darn good. 1.3 seconds, yeah. So pretty darn good. And also pretty darn good is the Holden Maloo. Despite being a Formula Drift car, yeah, it's in last, I know, it's not great, but... And also doing impressive is the Holden Maloo. Despite being a drift car, it's faster than a WRC Group A Pulsar. It's faster than the 850R. It's faster than the Peugeot 207. It did a 124.01. It's a second and a half faster than its previous time. And speaking of the Peugeot, it punched well above its weight. It was almost as fast as a BTC car. It's faster than the M8 prototype. It's faster than the 695 Abarth Cup. It's faster than a WRC Fiesta on the first run around. Not by much, 0.2 of a second, sorry. But there you go. That's another pretty darn impressive showing, considering how far down it is on PI and horsepower. But what can we gather from this entire Mountain Pass ordeal? The Volkswagen IDR is stupidly fast. If there is a car you do not F with in a hill climb, it's the Volkswagen IDR, because it set the benchmark on its first run, and it didn't get beaten. It got close to being beaten by the Jesco, but it didn't get beaten. over the course of the entire series, and then it came back and absolutely thrashed the competition by a solid 2 seconds. So there you go. That is going to be it for this episode and for the Mountain Pass. And I'll be back with more Horizon 4.